Hey guys, as you know, we're going to begin our new two-part mini-series called Politics That Divide. But before we do that, let me just mention two quick things very quickly. First of all, I want to thank all of you who filled out the life group interest survey that we had. We just wanted to find out what would be the interest level in life groups, and as we knew, there would be a good interest level that's there, and we're very grateful for that. You know, as leaders, we've been praying about this and asking what to do and how do we do all of this. And after thinking about it, after praying about it, we determined that right now we're going to postpone life groups a bit. We're going to continue to reassess it. We're going to keep thinking about it, praying about it, finding out what's the best way to do all of this. But our main concern is really that we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently giving a wrong message to a world that's without Christ, and while we're trying to reach them. And so there's always that balance, and whether you fall on a side that says this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the world, or you feel like this is really not bad at all, is really not the reason why we'd made this decision. We're coming to these conclusions trying to put the church's best foot forward, thinking long-term, reaching people for Christ. And so I hope you'll pray with us in this, that we can really find the wisdom in what to do. And on a brighter note, many of you know we've been looking to do some things with our sanctuary. We're new carpet, there's new chairs coming. That's probably all coming the end of October, beginning of November. We'll be moving the soundboard down, trying to get some better sound in there, potentially doing some things with lights to get better lighting in there. I know sometimes we see the flickering. I don't know if we can deal with that right now or if it's going to be after that, but a lot of things that we're trying to tackle all at one time. But what that's going to do is it's going to create at least one Sunday, October 25th, and potentially the Sunday after, where we will not be able to meet in the sanctuary to worship together. And so we've decided on the October 25th, let's make this a good day for our church. Let's have some fun. We can't have our regular fall festival that we have, but as a church body, we can come together. We've got great space outside, and we're going to come together and we're going to have a bonfire, and we're going to do some pumpkin painting for the kids. But we're also going to have a service that day. It'll be outside. We'll have a tent. Maybe not everybody will be able to fit under it, but we're saying, hey, everybody bring your lawn chair, bring a blanket. And that day we're hoping to have some really, really good barbecue. I don't know how many of you know, we have a guy in our church who is part of the Myron Mixon barbecue team. He's a world famous barbecue guy. And so he's going to be making some barbecue. We're going to make it a good day. We may not be able to be in the sanctuary while it's under renovation, but we're going to have some fun as a church family. And what we would love is for everybody to come to one service. So really, we have the space. If you feel comfortable, we'd love to have everybody at one time. It'd be really, really cool to be able to do that. And if you'll look in the newsletter, you'll see more information on that service, some things, some logistics of that, as well as future life group stuff when that starts coming about. So again, keep praying for that. That's going to be a great time. We're looking forward to that. So I want to get to our two-part series here now. You've been hearing it's Politics That Divide, and I know some of you have said, what in the world is the pastor going to talk about? And I got to tell you, I've been seriously, just as I'm thinking about this, kind of nervous about it, because it's, in case you haven't noticed, we are in a politically charged time in our country. This is not like any election I've ever seen. And at the same time, I've also seen in churches across America, there's a bit of division that goes on inside of churches, because you have people that say, I am Republican, and if you're not Republican, you can't be Christian. And other people saying, I am Democrat, and if you're not Democrat, you can't be Christian. Others say they're both wrong. If you're not Libertarian, you can't be Christian. Others say I'm independent, and it just goes on and on and on. And I think we have to get to a place where we begin, that we realize that politics can divide the church, and it's not the will of God. And so we're going to look at that today. And as I start this is really not my text, but I think it's important to begin this. The Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, beginning with verse 1 going through 2, he says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient. Notice what he's saying about how the church should treat one another. He says, be patient with one another. the fact that we're patient with one another means that there's a reason for us to have to be patient. Whether it's who they are as an individual or also maybe how they believe politically. It could be any of it. He said, be patient, bearing with one another in love. That word bearing is not a good word. That means it's somebody that you're having to bear with. It's not an easy thing. And sometimes in the church, we have a hard time being patient. We have a hard time bearing with one another. And the Bible says that we should be patient and we should bear with him. Then he goes on in verse 3, and he says, make every effort. In other words, it's going to be hard to bear with people and to be patient with people. Make every effort to keep the unity. What is Paul concerned about? Unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. He said there should be a bond between us, and it should be a peaceful bond as the church of Jesus Christ. And so with that, we're going to go to the prayer of Jesus, and you'll notice it says John 17, because we're going to look really at this whole chapter. John 17 is a prayer of Jesus. As far as I can, haven't done a full study on it, but as far as I can remember, I don't know of any other place that we see a prayer of Jesus from the very beginning when he says Father till the very end in this kind of detail. And this entire chapter is that prayer, and it has to do with us and where we are in this political season. And I want to also tell you this before I go through this, is that I think I mentioned to you before that I actually was watching a podcast a few weeks ago, and I was just thinking about all this stuff with politics and thinking, Lord, I want to address this with our church because I love our church and I want us to grow in this. And as I was listening to this podcast, I was just so convicted by it that I actually had to pull over and ask the Lord to forgive me personally first. And just really felt that I wanted to take a lot of what this person said and pull it in because I just feel like it was that good. If we think about this for just a minute, we have lost the ability in our community and in our day to have a discussion of politics and to do it in an agreeable way. We've lost the ability to have a discussion. If someone is a Republican, then they're just a gun-toting racist. If they are a Democrat, then they're an immoral socialist. If they're an independent, then they're just crazy. If they're libertarian, it just goes on and on and on. And we have made all kinds of assumptions about people when we really don't know who they are. Now, as you know, and many of you know that I do. I have a strong conservative lean, and I'm one that, I have strong political feelings. But I never want my politics to usurp my faith. Never want that to happen. My faith, I am a Christian before I'm an American or before I am affiliated with any political party. And so it's important that we as the church show the world that we can have discussions without getting angry and name-calling and hating. And one of the things this guy said in this podcast that I thought was so interesting and yet so true is that, most of politics is driven out of fear. It's fear of if this person gets in, then they're going to do this to you. If you let this person get in and you don't vote, then they're going to try to take this away from you. Now send me $100 so I can help you. They use fear to drive you to the voting booth and then to raise dollars for it. But we, the church, should model that we can disagree politically, but still, even though we disagree politically, we can still love unconditionally. We can have an unconditional love for one another. The Bible commands that we do that. And we can get to a place that we're able to understand the viewpoint of the other side. And so here's the question that I want to kind of start this out with. Not only can we get to the place that we understand the viewpoint of the other side, but do we want to? Are we willing to allow ourselves to? In other words, are we willing to step out and say, I want to try to understand where the people who disagree with me are coming from? Because this is really important scripturally, and we're going to see why in just a moment. But can we get to that place? And are we willing to evaluate? The person asked this question. I wrote this one down verbatim. He says, are you willing to evaluate your politics through real Christian faith instead of creating a version of Christian faith that supports your politics? In other words, are you allowing your Christianity to filter politics through it, or are you allowing your politics to filter Christianity through it? Are we willing to follow Jesus? And he said this, and I love this. He said, are you willing to follow Jesus even when following Jesus creates space between you and your political party, or you and your political party's candidate? And the fact is that many times we're not willing to do that. Jesus saw this division coming all the way back in John 17, and we find him praying a prayer. Now remember this, in John 17, he is about to go to the cross. The last 1/3 of the book of John is actually the last week of Jesus. So when you're reading this, he's a week away from crucifixion. And we're going to look at that prayer that Jesus prayed. And I'm not sure that we ever really pray this. It's interesting. I don't know anywhere where we see that the Bible records a prayer of Jesus that is this long and this detailed. And yet, I don't think I've ever heard anyone pray it. Maybe they have, and I just don't remember it, but I don't remember them praying it. So let's look at it. John 17 verse 1 says this: after Jesus said this, he looked toward heaven and he prayed. So here we are right in the beginning. He says, Father, the hour has come. The hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. So he's saying, you know what? Glorify me in resurrection, in crucifixion and resurrection, so that now I can glorify you. Right? So everything that's about to happen, he's saying this is for the glory of God. And you'll see him say this over and over. Then we go on to verse 11. So we have 10 verses where he's talking about that crucifixion, resurrection, and him being with God. Then he says, I will remain in the world no longer, but they, speaking of the disciples, all of his disciples, but they are still in the world, and I am coming to you. He says they're remaining. I'm leaving, but they're having to stay here. Holy Father, protect them. Protect them by the power of your name. Notice that. His prayer is for protection. The name you gave me. And then he tells us what they should be protected from and why they should be protected. Why? So that they may be one as we are one. He didn't say protect them so that they don't have any physical harm. He didn't say protect them so that they don't, so that their emotions aren't hurt and that they're crying. And he said protect them so that they may be one as we are one. He wanted unity in the church protected. So with this, we see first of all the purpose of prayer. The purpose of the prayer of Christ. He was praying for that protection so that they would remain unified. Because he knew that if they would be unified, nothing could stop them and the mission that he was leaving. But if they were not unified, they would splinter and they would stall out. They would begin to just stop in their tracks. The church would begin to stop in its tracks. They would stall. I started recently getting into trying to smoke meat a little bit, and I've had that opportunity I mentioned with Dave Travis and his barbecue experience, and I've been trying to draw as much wisdom as I can from him. So I've started to really enjoy this, and I'm learning about something called the stall when you smoke meat that is bigger and thicker pieces. And it's after a few hours, the temperatures inside the meat get to between 155 and 170 degrees, and then it won't move. For hours, it just stays at that temperature. And the only way to get it past that is either to turn up the heat and press through or just wait it out. And really what's happening is called evaporative cooling. And it's basically, it's sweating out some of the liquid from the inside, and as it evaporates from the outside of the meat, it's actually cooling off the meat, and so it's having a hard time moving past those temperatures. And what happens is, just like that, the church can stall out where it just can't get to the place and the passion and the temperature that it needs to be. God said, I don't want that. The second thing we see is that Jesus begins to pray for us. Look at what happens in John chapter 17, verse 15. He says, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. He is equating this whole thing of unity, or maybe I should say of disunity, with protecting us from the evil one. He says, protect them so that they can be one, and protect them from the evil one. Because he realizes that the enemy of our soul, the evil one, knows that if he can disunify the church will stall. In John chapter 17, verse 20 and 21, he says, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. This is really important. He says, I'm not just praying for the disciples, I'm praying for everybody who believes in me through their message. This is a recorded prayer that Jesus prays for you. This is his prayer for you, no longer for the disciples. This is Jesus 2,000 years before you're born praying for you. And he says, my prayer is not for them alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. He's praying 2,000 years in the future as well, that unity is still going on in the church, that they may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. He says, the same way, Father, that you and I are one, Father, make them one. Don't let disunity come in the church. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. And this is important. This is so important. Why is it so important that we remain one? Why is it so important that we overcome the evil one and that we stay unified even if we don't agree on politics and other things outside the church? He says it's important because the world, he wants the unsaved world to believe that Jesus is Lord. In other words, what he's saying is, I want unbelievers to see the church and their ability to disagree politically, but to love each other unconditionally, and them say the church is different from the world. It should be something that should draw people to the church. But all too often, people in the church, they serve the same Lord, they disagree politically, and it becomes a wedge between their relationship. And God says it shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way. He prayed for future generations, the rich and the poor, the Gentile, the Jew, the free, the slave, the military, the tax gatherers, the educated, the uneducated, the men, the women, the black, the white, the brown, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Libertarians, the Independents, everybody. He's praying for all of these people that they may be one, whether they agree with each other, whether they see the world through the same lens or not. He says, I pray that when they take on my name, that no longer will these things separate them and divide them, but that the world would say that even though they don't agree on all of these things, they are still one. That when we walk into church, we see somebody that we don't agree with, maybe on multiple things, but we say, that's still my brother, that's my sister, and I love them. It's so good, because what we carry in common is more important than what we disagree with. The Spirit of Christ in us is greater than what we disagree with. And Jesus was convinced this was absolutely critical to the mission of the church, unity. Jesus wanted a church that was diverse but unified in race and in culture and everything else, but unified. Which brings me to the last part of that, and that is that Christ wanted a complete unity. We see in John chapter 17, beginning with verse 22 and reading down through verse 23, he says, I have given them the glory that you gave me. He's still talking to the Father. He says, the glory, Father, that you gave me, I've given to them, that they may be one as we are one. I and them and you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Here he goes again with this unity thing. You're tired of hearing me talk about unity. You're tired of hearing me talk about it. You know why I'm talking about it? Because Jesus did over and over and over and over. This was so important to Jesus. And if it was this important to Jesus, shouldn't it be important to us? Shouldn't it be something that we strive for? That we learn to bear with one another and to be patient with one another. He says, I and them, you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Not a pseudo-unity, not I'm able to put up with that person, but a complete unity. Then, he says it again, here we go again, then the world will know that you sent me. He wanted our unity to speak something to a lost world. That everyone around us would say, they're just different. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. He's talking about a unity of faith, not politics, not a worldview. Then the world will see. And all these people came together in the New Testament with all the different backgrounds. Roman soldiers, people working in Caesar's household, slaves and the poor of the poor, everything in the middle, coming from different worldviews, coming from different educations and different backgrounds. They all came together for a single purpose, to spread the message of the Messiah, because the message of the Messiah was more important than anything else. The bottom line is this. Whatever candidate you vote for, whatever candidate you think is going to save the world and save the nation, right? Whoever that is, they're going to win or they're going to lose based on a number of votes. But the community and the church wins or loses based on how we treat each other in the process. How we treat each other in the process. Even atheists agree that Christianity shaped Western civilization. It was the teachings of Christ that set the moral fabric of this nation and so much of the West. Do we want it to fall under us? Do we want it to be something that starts crumbling under us, that we're willing to let that go because we can't even stay unified? Do we want that to be what goes in our generation? And so in our history, regardless of what political party you're from, there have been leaders in that political party that have gotten it wrong. There have been political parties that come and political parties that go. Jesus started a movement. He started something that was different from a political party. It's not something that's here today and it's gone tomorrow. It was something that was powerful. It was something that was unified. It was something that was effective. But it depends on our unity. It depends on us loving unconditionally. So, as we disagree politically, let's focus on loving unconditionally and praying for unity. So, let's disagree politically. That's okay. Let's love unconditionally, and let's pray for unity. And in the meantime, we're going to give some questions to consider, just two, as we consider this. When we think about these questions to consider, the first one is simply this. If you know a fellow Christian disagrees with you politically, does it affect your care for them? Does it affect how you view them? You see them down the aisle, do you look at them differently and say, you know what, I'm going to go talk to somebody else first? It should never be, not in the church. We're different. And then secondly, do you filter your faith through your politics or your politics through your faith? In other words, if you think one party has it all right or one candidate has it all right and the other candidate has it all wrong, then it's possible that we're taking our Christianity and filtering it through our politics. We should be holding up the Word of God, holding up our faith, and then letting any candidate and any politics filter through that. That's how we live a life that pleases the Lord. Ultimately, we don't want to be Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian. We want to be Christian. And then we vote our moral, biblical conscience. Thank you so much for watching this and going through this with me. I know it's not a fun thing to talk about politics, But the unity of the church is so important, and it's going to be so important as we move forward as a church as well, that we portray unity and diversity to our community. God bless you. Again, thank you so much for watching.